Hi, I want to talk to y'all about something that might affect everybody. It might affect you, it might affect your family, it also might affect your business if you're a business owner, and it possibly could even affect your own home. And what I want to talk to you about today is eminent domain. You possibly have heard that word, probably aren't too familiarized with it, but I think that if you know what eminent domain means and how it can affect you, how it can affect your neighbor, and how it can affect even your neighborhoods, you will want to know how the government and also how private developers are using eminent domain today to benefit you and possibly not benefit you. So, simply put, eminent domain means the power of the state to take private property for the use in a public project in return or reasonable compensation is defined, and reasonable compensation is defined in terms of fair market value. So just about everyone knows that under a process called eminent domain, the government can and does seize private property for public use to build a road, a school, or a courthouse. And since our country was founded, private property has served as a cornerstone of our freedoms. The constitutional right to private property is based on the principle that government should not unreasonably interfere with the use of one's property. But in the Declaration of Colonial Rights, the First Continental Congress explicitly stated that Americans are entitled to life, liberty, and property, and they have never ceded to any sovereign power a right to dispose of either without their consent. So the government has repeatedly cited that the takings clause as a justification for taking private property without the landowner's consent. Although this practice is known as eminent domain, it has occurred since early days of our country. The government has been restricted from taking private property except when required for public good, such as a building, also roads, and most recently for the economic development of cities. And the government also decides to undertake economic development projects that the government can seize your family-owned farm and sell the property to a private developer to build a new factory. So you kind of have to ask yourself, well, is that to the best interest of everybody? It can be if you're talking about more sales tax revenue for that city, but also know that somebody is losing their home or possibly their land. It's not what our founding fathers had in mind when they drafted the Fifth Amendment. But did you know that the government can also seize your land for private use if they can prove that doing it will serve for the public good? So cities across the country have been using eminent domain to force people off their land so private developers can build more expensive homes and offices that will pay more in property taxes than the buildings that they are replacing. So under eminent domain, the government buys your property, paying you what's determined to be the fair market value, and from there, developing with that land by private developers, so in the hopes that they can receive more taxes from that development, such as apartments, also commercial buildings. Dana Berliner and Scott Bullock are attorneys at a libertarian nonprofit group called the Institute for Justice, which has filed suit on behalf of property owners against cities throughout the U.S. And they claim that taking private property this way is unconstitutional. It's fundamentally wrong and contrary to the Constitution for the government to take private property from a private owner and have it handed over to another private owner just because the government thinks that the person is going to make more productive use of the land. Everyone knows that property can be taken for a road, but no one thinks that a property can be taken to give it to their neighbor or a large business down the street for their economic benefit. People are shocked when they hear that this is going on around the country, says Berliner. This is about cities' futures. No city can survive without a strength tax base. It is the right to consider, is this a public good? Or some mayors are saying, yes, it is. But admits that it's difficult and unfortunate that families and businesses, smaller businesses possibly, are being asked to give up their home for a price. But the development can't go unless the city can remove the owners and their neighbors through eminent domain. So you have to think about the power to take property through eminent domain is frequently abused by the government for unnecessary and unreasonable purposes. This practice harms landowners by forcing them to expend their valuable resources. Eminent domain takings are especially concerning in the context of urban renewal. A law professor at George Mason University and an adjacent scholar by the name of Ilya Somin said that transforming property to private interest for economic development lends to victimize the poor, racial minorities, and politically weak. Mr. Somin points out that eminent domain takings disproportionately occur in poor and minority neighborhoods, which include great harm on the individual landowners and their communities. As Americans, we must not be complacent when the government infringes on individual liberties and restricts our constitutional rights. We must ensure that the government is taking check and does not overreach the limitations placed on its power. So let's think about eminent domain and how it's affecting us. And also think, does this serve the interests of the people rather than the interest of big government?